Welcome to Marvel Source. I'm Bifna, and today I want to slow things down a little bit. With the holiday season upon us, time is something we don't have enough of, and I want to take this opportunity to give you guys my top 5 favorite Marvel comics and series to save you time when trying to find something new to read. But before we get going, even I sometimes have trouble finding something to read, so if you have any Marvel series or specific comics that you love that aren't mentioned in this video, feel free to put them in the comments below and I'll check them out. Who knows, maybe it's something I haven't read yet and I'll find a new favorite comic to put on my next list. At number 5, we're starting off with Vote Loki. If you watch the Disney Plus series of Loki, you will see in the 5th episode that Loki from this universe was one of the variants that was trapped. He was the president in this comic book, and this is pretty much explaining how he got to that position. Vote Loki was a 4-part series that came out in June 2016 that ran till August of 2016, and it was really a satire on the 2016 United States presidential election. Loki in this comic comes off very much as a Trump-like figure. The series centered around Loki's controversial political campaign as President of the United States, mostly on the fact that he had the guts to lie outright to the American people and not hide it. And Loki really comes out of it with a lot of support. The tagline for the series is "Believe," with the L-I-E, the lie, really emphasized in the word, to get to the point across that Loki was just gonna lie to them, and he was pretty upfront about it. And to play the side for the against Loki crowd, Nisa Contreras is a reporter whose family was killed when Loki destroyed her home. Throughout the entire series, she's trying to convince the American people that Loki is not who she should vote for. Also, just a nice little touch in this series, Loki shifts back and forth between a female and male character throughout this series whenever it's needed. Sometimes Loki believes he needs to look like a woman just because they let off a more calming presence when she's trying to deal with certain people, such as Nisa. There was even a cool cover that replicated the early Captain America cover, but there's Loki's in the background of this, which are his followers, and instead of Bucky in the bottom right, it's Falcon. I really did like this series because it gave a good little twist on Loki where it's not just him fighting the Avengers. I like how they went the presidential route with him. If anyone could be the parody of the presidential election for that year, it would be Loki, but because of the political side of it, that's why it's on the bottom of the top 5. Number 4 on our list is the Secret Invasion series. This series was written by Brian Michael Bendis, who I think did a phenomenal job on this because the story is just phenomenal, and I really hope that when they do the adaptation of this for Marvel Cinematic Universe, the Disney Plus series, that they really go as close to this series as they can because this was just phenomenal. Secret Invasion was a huge crossover storyline that had 8 issues directly titled Secret Invasion, but there was a whole bunch of other comics that kind of flowed into this if you want to read outside of this particular series. After the Kree Skull invasion, Earth's superheroes from Iron Man, Mr. Fantastic, Namor, Black Bolt, Professor Xavier, and Doctor Strange all got together and formed a group called the Illuminati to confront the Skrulls, going to the Skrull Empire and warning them that any future invasion on Earth would be met with further reprisal. The Skrulls end up capturing several superhumans and infiltrating Earth's defenses, with their leader Veronica herself posing as the heroine Spider-Woman. Skrulls, being the shapeshifters they are, take on the image of Earth's mightiest heroes and villains. No one can be trusted, and even Skrulls themselves who've been shapeshifted for too long question their own identity. The reason this is one of my top favorite series is because it reminds me very similar of how a TV show works. Early on, I couldn't really wrap my head around what was going on, a lot of confusion, but as I read to the end, things started to become more clear, and then once I got to the end, I started it again, reading it through with the knowledge I already knew of how the series turns out, and just started catching up on these little things that were throughout this series that I didn't recognize the first time around, but now made sense on a second viewing. It has a lot of reread value, and I think that's pretty important for a comic book. And for that reason, I think it deserves to be in my top 5. Coming in at number 3 is giant-sized Wolverine Old Man Logan. In this issue, Logan takes his time gutting and cutting up every member of the Hulk gang one by one. In this comic, the Hulk gang turns out to be inbred cannibal grandchildren of Bruce Banner and Jen Walters. 2 of the Hulk gang family members killed Logan's family, and that set him off. He ended up killing them and then going on a complete rampage through this hillbilly-esque style of Hulk family. And I love in this series, they don't call the Hulk Bruce Banner, they call him Pappy Banner because he is the patriarch of this group that started this family. It's not often that you get to see anyone fight the Hulk and survive. The only other two I've read recently is Logan and Deadpool. And you can see how the Deadpool one turned out in one of my previous videos looking at Deadpool Kills Marvel Universe. The Hulk in this one, though, doesn't look like your conventional Hulk. He looks more of a giant troll, whereas the rest of the family kinda has more of a human look to them, albeit they're green and huge as well. Absolutely love this issue, mainly because you get to see Wolverine go into a complete rampage of bloodlust that you don't normally get to see in many of the other comic books. He goes pretty hard in a lot of Avengers books, but he doesn't really go all out to his potential because he had nothing fully to lose back then. He lost his family in this one and it just set him off. Lined up for second place today is the House of M series. And this series is also written by the same guy who wrote the Secret Invasion series, Brian Michael Bendis. And if that's any correlation to what the Secret Invasion was, the writing in this is even better. Just like Secret Invasion, House of M was another one of those crossover series with 8 issues, but you didn't have to read the outside series to understand what was going on in this House of M one, but those do add a little bit of flavor to what goes on in this storyline for you to just maybe enjoy it a little bit more. But this is also a standalone series, so you can read through this and still have a great read. This became a follow-up to the events of Planet X and Avengers Disassembled storyline, in which the Scarlet Witch suffered a mental breakdown and tried to alter the fabric of reality to create her lost children. Magneto, Scarlet Witch, and her twin brother Quicksilver played major roles in this series. Even in this universe, Scarlet Witch made the 616 Earth, our main reality, switch to Earth 58163 for a brief amount of time until she switched it back. And it's one of the reasons why I love this series. I love when comic books do a multiverse thing and switch the realities. I just love seeing that variation of what is normal to what could be. The X-Men and the Avengers meet up to talk about what to do with Wanda Maximoff. Emma Frost concludes that killing Wanda is the only way to end her destructive magic. By the end of the first series, heroes are disappearing one at a time until only Spider-Man is left, and then he is soon engulfed by white light. And from there, the series takes off, leaving you wondering what is going on. But it also shows the struggle Magneto has about what his goals are and how that's affecting his family, because he even blames himself for Wanda's mental state. Just like Secret Invasion, this storyline is phenomenal and I highly suggest you read it. Coming in at number 1 is probably one of the most interesting Marvel comic series I have ever read, Marvel 1602. This 8-issue series was published in 2003 and was written by none other than Neil Gaiman, who is one of the most fantastic writers in not just comics but film and television as well as radio. Just having his name on this series when I first heard about it had me sold right off the bat. This series takes place in a timeline where Marvel superheroes exist in the Elizabethan era. Faced with the destruction of their world by a mysterious force, the heroes must fight to save their universe. Many of the early Marvel superheroes, Nick Fury, the X-Men, Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, as well as villains like Doctor Doom and Magneto, appear in various roles. Some hold high positions of power, like Nick Fury works for Queen Elizabeth very closely. The characters start to come to realize that something is wrong with this universe and they must solve the mystery behind their own existence. On top of all these weird weather phenomenons and the forces Doctor Strange is trying to deal with, there's also the plot of King James to try and usurp Queen Elizabeth's throne, which Nick Fury is trying to stop. All wrapped into this real legend of Virginia Dare, who was the first English child born in the New World English colonies. And Marvel 1602 does a great job at portraying their version of what could have happened to her. Initially, 1602 ranked first in August of 2003 US Comics, and people gave it mixed praise, saying it was a good series, but it really gave more of a glorified what if vibe. But I think it's an amazing reimagination of the Marvel Universe. This is ranked number 1 for me because, again, I love different realities. I love seeing different takes on some of the familiar superheroes, and 1602 takes it in such a completely different direction while still staying true to these characters and giving us this reimagined look at what these characters would be like had they grown up in this time period. That's it for now. I hope you enjoyed this top 5 list of some of my favorite Marvel comics and series. If you haven't read any of these comics or series, be sure to check them out, and if you have any suggestions for me, leave them in the comment section below. And as always, be sure to hit the notification button and the subscribe button so you know when these videos are going live. Thanks for watching.